Welcome back everyone to Art a la Carte, and in this episode I'm going to show you how to draw a grizzly bear. And then just because tons of you guys ask, I'm going to use an HB for the initial sketch, then switch over probably to a 3B for some of the darker lining. So what I'm going to do is very lightly sketch in the grizzly bear's head. I'm going to choose a nice circle for that. And then I'm going to bring down this really large oval shape. I'm just going to kind of draw in this big oval. Maybe a little bit wider at the bottom than at the top. And again, keeping everything really loose because I'm just building in my shapes here. So here's the bear's head, and then coming into the shoulders, and then coming off these shoulders are his arms. So I'm just going to kind of block them in with a little bit of stick figure. So they kind of come down off the shoulders to the elbow and out and just kind of hang limply. This one I'm going to have kind of wrapping around in front of him. And then last I'm going to block in his hind legs, which because he's standing on his little legs, they're just going to kind of come in, bend in, and out with his feet. Just like that. There we go. Next thing I want to do is, now that I have all of the shapes and things in the places that I want them to be, then I'm going to go ahead and kind of flesh him out a little bit. So his arms, they start off really thick, and then as they come down, they thin out to these little bear paw points. So there's the first one. And this one here, I'm going to have a little overlapping. So the bear paw comes in front of him, kind of comes up, and then you see his arm a little bit. So there's a little bit of an overlapping right here. And wraps around down here and around, and then overlaps the rest of his arm there. Then he's got this big bear belly. Bear belly. I better put some clothes on his bear belly. And then for his little hind legs, again, thicker at the top, and as they come down, a little bit thinner into his little bear paws down here. Now looking at his head here, I'm going to go ahead and give him two little bear ears, not super big. I'm trying not to make him look cute and fluffy. He's already kind of cute. I mean, he's a bear. He's like a walking teddy bear. So give him smaller little ears. If you want him to be cuter and fluffier, just make his ears just a little bit bigger. That'll give him some of that cute appearance. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in his face. So he has a really narrow forehead. So I'm not going to cut the circle in half. I'm going to go up a little bit higher and cut across, like right at the base of where the ears are. And I'm going to put two circles, kind of oval shapes, and I'm going to have them kind of tilted upward, like in a V, so that they're angling up. And then I'm going to put a nice round circle for his nose, and then this kind of weird looking W shape right there for his mouth, and then his bottom lip or his mouth kind of coming down like that, and his little jaw. Alright, put a couple of lines around his muzzle there to kind of pull that out. And now he's pretty much blocked in, so now I can go back in and start adding in those details that I want to add. So that means I'm going to take my gummy eraser and erase the lines I don't need anymore, which is pretty much all of them. And again, this is where you want to decide what you want to ultimately do with your drawing. Do you want it a painting? Do you want it a pencil sketch? So I'm going to first draw in just very lightly. I'm not going for lines, I'm going for more texture. So I'm going to just use my pencil and I'm just going to start dabbling. And I'm going to create the fur line with these dots. And by creating this fur line with dots instead of a line is going to help me get the impression of some fur. I'm going to do the same thing at the top of his head. And the fun thing is this bear kind of has a part right in the middle of his head, it almost looks like. So it kind of dips down just a little bit and then comes back up. And where I want the lines or the fur to look a little bit fluffier, furrier, I'm going to give just a little bit longer lines to that. So towards the top, I'll use smaller little dots, and as I move down where I want him to be a little bit more shaggy, I'll lengthen my lines just a little bit. So you'll see that my lines are going in the direction of the fur. So if I do have a little bit more of a line than a dot, I'm pulling it the direction that the fur would go. Now when I get down to this bottom, to the bottom legs, I'm going to bring a line of this fur in to kind of indicate his belly, kind of coming down. It'll give a little bit more layering to the bear. And then I'm going to bring in his hind legs. And again, I'm just following the lines that I drew in before. Even though they're really lightly, I can still see them. So I'm just drawing right over top of those and they'll just blend right in together. Alright, so I have my bear's shape all outlined in my little marks in there. So I'm going to just finish up some details on his nose. So for his nose, it's this really great circle, but inside the circle there are going to be 2 other circles for his nostrils right there. And it's all going to be pretty much darkened in. I'm going to shade that pretty much all in, but I might shade in the nostril part just a little bit more. And then he's got some really nice black lips inside of his mouth a little bit. I don't know if you guys have bears where you live. We don't have grizzlies, but we do have black bears. And I've have twice in my life seen them in the wild, up close and personal. Not always the most peaceful thing to see. I suppose if I was out looking for one and being prepared for it, it would be fun. But they always seem to sneak up on me, and I'm like, oh, there's a bear. Okay. So what kind of animals do you have living around where you live? Do you have any great wildlife? Or do you live in the city and not have... Well, sometimes in the city you get wildlife. My parents live in a pretty big city, and every once in a while they have a moose walking through their yard. Which is interesting, because you wouldn't think Washington having too much moose, but they do. Alright, so I've got his little face, and now I'm going to start adding in some texture with my pencil to push things back. The more shading and things you lay down, the farther it's going to push things back. So I really want his muzzle or his snout to stand out and be pushed forward. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to go around his muzzle, and just by adding a little bit of shading in here, you're going to see how that pushes his muzzle forward. Just a little bit like that. Bam! Pushes it forward. I'm not going super dark. I'm going to push his eye sockets back just a little bit. And then I'm going to just continue on this, finding out what parts I want to bring forward, what parts I want to push back. And I'm just going to start layering in this color. So the key to this is obviously just time. The more time you spend putting in those individual hairs, the better it'll look. That's definitely why I put that into time lapse, because you guys don't want to sit here for an hour watching me make individual strokes to this bear's fur. So, but you'll see that the payoff, putting in that extra bit of time, really gives you a nice piece. As I want to add in a little bit of hint of claws, so I'm just going to put in, do some dark shadows right there for the claws. Same thing over here. And they kind of curve into each other. And then just a little bit here on the back paw. Skunk! I had a request for a skunk. So there we go. I barely finished this drawing. The jokes, they're so funny. But I want to go ahead and challenge myself and try something that I'm not sure will work, because I haven't really done a lot of them before. But that's the fun thing about art. And so I'm going to try to add watercolor on top of this. Now, the two things that might happen: one, it may turn out fabulous, or two, the watercolor might muddy the pencil up. So I'm not exactly certain. So let's try it out, see what happens. So either I will have a successful painting at the end of this that I will be excited about, or we'll have a successful lesson learned on what not to mix. So let's try it.